Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're pulling right back on the curtain of a total nightmare that affects thousands of property owners every single year, yet it remains almost completely misunderstood. We're diving deep into the hidden science of water damage, and we're using some fascinating data from 5-star Water Damage Restoration Columbus to do it. We're going to uncover the exact physics, the incredibly fast-moving microbiology, and the strict hard math of what actually happens when water invades a home.
Look at this number. 30 grand. Now, what if I told you that the difference between a relatively minor, say $3,000 cleanup, and a massive $30,000 absolute disaster isn't really about how much water actually spilled? It is purely about how fast you act. Okay, let's dive right into this because water damage isn't just about grabbing a stack of beach towels and mopping up a puddle in your basement. It is a literal race against time and microbiology. Water simply does not wait. It actively spreads, it wicks right up into your drywall, and every single hour that ticks by aggressively multiplies both the cost and the sheer destruction of the property.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll trace a single flood event by looking at 1. The ticking clock, 2. Upper Arlington's perfect storm, 3. The 3 categories of water, 4. The science of structural drying, and finally 5. Navigating the insurance claim process. Let's get to it. Section 1. The ticking clock. The absolutely most crucial thing to understand right off the bat is that experts do not look at a flooded home as a puddle. They view it as a ticking countdown.
The stark contrast here really says it all. If you jump on it and get professional extraction and structural drying started on, say, your carpet within 12 hours or drywall within 24 hours, those materials can very often be completely saved. But if that exact same material just sits there wet for 48 hours, you have crossed the point of no return. At that point, it's a total loss. It is headed straight for the local landfill, which means you're looking at complete demolition and reconstruction.
Let's actually walk through this timeline hour by hour. At just 12 hours, the padding under your carpet begins to fail. By 24 hours, the water wicking up inside your drywall hits its absolute peak, meaning water is literally climbing up the inside of your walls where you can't even see it. By 48 hours, especially in an environment like Central Ohio, where summer humidity regularly hangs around 80%, mold growth picks in. And by 72 hours, the environment has turned completely toxic. You aren't just dealing with a water problem anymore, you are dealing with widespread, dangerous contamination.
Which brings us to Section 2, Upper Arlington's perfect storm. Now, what's really interesting about this is how hyper-local geography can actually accelerate that timeline into a perfect storm of risks.
Upper Arlington is such a fascinating case study because the underlying causes of water damage there are deeply rooted in its specific geography and history. Take Old Arlington. The homes there were built back between the 1920s and 1950s using cast iron and clay drain pipes. When you factor in massive mature tree roots seeking out moisture, the primary risk becomes devastating sewage backups. But then, look over near Reed Road. Totally different story. The soil there is incredibly clay-heavy, sitting right in the Scioto River watershed. And clay, while it doesn't absorb water, it acts like a giant swimming pool, trapping the water and pushing it right up against foundation walls, which causes this incredibly rapid basement seepage.
And then, of course, you have the hidden winter threat, the extreme freeze-thaw cycle. You know how it is. Temperatures can melt snow on a balmy 40-degree afternoon and then plummet to 15 degrees overnight. That rapid swing freezes and cracks copper supply lines. But here's the really insidious part. The break doesn't actually flood your home immediately. It only floods later when the temperatures rise again and the ice plug finally melts. So you go to work thinking everything is totally fine, and you return to a catastrophic basement flood.
All right, Section 3, the 3 categories of water. We've talked about how the water gets in, but now we need to look at the exact chemical makeup of the water that's actually doing the damage.
Because look, not all water is created equal. The industry actually classifies water into 3 distinct categories. Category 1 is clean water. Think a burst supply line. It needs fast extraction, for sure, but it's relatively safe to handle. Category 2 is gray water. That's your overflowing washing machine that contains some soapy contaminants. But Category 3? Oh man, that is black water. We're talking raw sewage backups from those old clay pipes or dirty outdoor floodwater. Black water requires extremely dangerous biohazard protocols. You can't just hit that with a shop vac. It requires full material removal and heavy antimicrobial sanitization to protect your family from pathogens like E. coli.
Now, mitigation experts don't just categorize the water, they also categorize the building materials themselves. Why? Because the porosity of the material completely dictates the scientific approach to drying it out. Class 1 materials like concrete absorb water super slowly. Class 2, like your standard drywall, drinks it up fast. Then you have Class 3, highly porous stuff like carpet and insulation. And finally, Class 4 involves specialty drying for things like hardwood floors, which stubbornly trap water deep inside the wood grain. You just absolutely cannot treat a soaked concrete floor the same way you treat a soaked hardwood floor.
Moving into Section 4, the science of structural drying. Let's pull back the curtain on how professionals literally visualize the invisible.
You see, true restoration isn't just guesswork. It's a hardcore, data-driven science governed by strict ICRC standards. The field itself is actually called psychrometry, which is the study of air and moisture mixtures. It's pretty amazing stuff. It dictates highly precise moisture measurement techniques, exact equipment placement formulas, and strict timelines. Every step is an entirely calculated process.
So, the journey of a real restoration crew is incredibly linear and disciplined. First up, emergency extraction using massive truck-mounted units. Second is detection, and this is critical. Crews use advanced thermal imaging cameras to actually spot the water hiding up inside a wall cavity before it destroys the structural integrity. Third is the structural drying phase, which runs 3 to 7 days continuously. And fourth, strict daily monitoring and adjustments of the equipment based purely on the data readings they're getting.
Remember earlier when I mentioned strict mathematics? Well, here is the exact formula crews have to use. 1 air mover for every 200 square feet, and 1 commercial dehumidifier for every 1,000 to 1,500 cubic feet. It is an exact science. If you under-equip the space, it dries way too slowly, and boom, you get mold. If you over-equip it, you just waste a massive amount of energy without actually improving the outcome at all.
And this brilliantly illustrates the endgame. Restoration crews don't just, touch a wall with their hand to see if it feels dry. They use highly calibrated meters to hit exact, non-negotiable targets. Wood framing absolutely must hit 15% moisture or less. Drywall has to drop to 12%. Concrete needs to register below 4%. They will not pull their equipment until these exact data points are reached. It's that simple.
Finally, Section 5, the insurance claim process. Because getting your house totally dry is honestly only half the battle. The other half is navigating the massive bureaucratic maze of an insurance claim.
Sloppy documentation gets claims denied. I really want to stress the critical importance of this because it is a harsh reality. Insurance adjusters, they don't care about how stressed out you are. They require absolute, irrefutable, data-backed proof of the affected areas and the exact mitigation steps that were taken. To actually get an insurance claim approved swiftly, restoration companies must speak the exact language that those underwriters demand. We are talking about providing a bulletproof paper trail. That means twice daily moisture logs, comprehensive thermal imaging photo logs, scope documents that flawlessly match the carrier's estimating software, and IICRC certified proof of drying. By operating as data scientists rather than just, a cleanup crew with some mops, professionals completely remove the friction from the claims process.
So, I want to leave you all with this final thought. Now that you're armed with the science of psychrometry, the scary timeline of mold, and the strict rules of restoration, if a pipe burst in your home today, would you just see a puddle on the floor or would you see the clock ticking? The hidden science of water damage really proves that time is the one thing you absolutely cannot afford to waste. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep looking beneath the surface.